are amazing. They're the cream of the crop. So you have Super Meat Boy, right? A game chock full of unique challenges and challenging levels. And then you have Warpzones. Sections filled with unique challenges and challenging levels. Not only is each Warp Zone a throwback to a certain retro game or theme that influenced Meat Boy, but 1 in 4 Warp Zones is actually a special Warp Zone where you can play as then unlock a special character. I love and I'm gonna commemorate my love for them today by playing through them with everyone's favorite character, Tofu Boy. Now this character needs no introduction. He sucks. He sucked for a long time, but he's trying to do better. He's even made it into the last level recently. The poor guy, he's putting in a lot of effort, and this is his next challenge on his way to 100%ing the game. Before we start, you may be wondering how I can even play Tofu Boy in these levels, since normally you're forced to play as Meat Boy, right? Well, it's by using this executable that I created. That's right, me. To use it, just launch it, select Tofu Boy by typing in pita file, and press 1 to lock him in. Now you're falling into my trap. No matter what, you're stuck as Tofu Boy. Unless you press 1 again and disable the lock. So, let's go. First things first, let's talk about the grading scale that we'll be using throughout this challenge. If a level is green, that means that I could beat it with Tofu Boy without any glitches. Even if the level is the hardest level in the game to beat without glitches, if I can beat it with Tofu Boy, then it's green. If the level is yellow, that means that I have to at least use the alt glitch to beat it. And if the level is red, that means that I have to use something a little bit more advanced than the alt glitch. I'll explain what that is later. All of that said, the 1-5 entry is green. And here we are at the first Warp Zone. Now I tried to figure out what these artworks were referencing. Some are easier than others. This one was a little bit hard. I think it's referencing Mega Man 2 by Meat Boy's pose and then the guys behind him. He also obviously has the Superman pose. Let me know if you have a better idea. Also interesting, this level's name is Sky Pup, and that is actually the last level in the original Super Meat Boy Flash game. And that is in absolutely no way green. As you can see, there's a giant gap in the bottom, so we have to use the alt glitch. And if you're wondering what the alt glitch is, pay close attention to what's about to happen. Yep, that's right. I went through that wall. That's exactly what the alt glitch does. And I'm about to do it again. So when you press Alt, you go into the Alt state. And in this state, you cannot see what's going on, but you can move in a direction and you can pass through walls and stand on air. It is particularly useful for Tofu Boy, since he has trouble making basic jumps, as you can see. And I'm gonna give a hot take here. You know how every single other character in the game has some kind of special power when you press the run button? Tofu Boy does not, so to me, this is how he makes up for it. Now you may notice something a little different about the Warp Zone in 112. It's a little bit special. Not only does it have a really cool cutscene, but it also has a really cool character. Meet Commander Video from the Bit Trip series. And don't be fooled by the screen saying he's from Bit Trip Runner. His first appearance was actually from the second level of Bit Trip Beat, but he was actually playable in Bit Trip Runner. Now I know you're asking, what the hell is Bit Trip? Well, it is a hexology, a series of 6 games, and they are kind of cool actually. One of them is a rhythm game with Pong controls, another one is an auto runner, another one is a click shooting bullet hell where you have to stay on a rail. Yep, these games are something else. It's kind of cool to see how creative games were back in these days, and it's really common to see a lot of flashing lights in them. I bet that's why Commander Video has that mask he wears. Anyways, since Commander Video has the power to float if you jump in the air, a lot of these levels just have these horizontal obstacles that he would normally have to float through. Unfortunately, this means that Tofu Boy cannot jump past them, but and with that, we've beaten our first Red Warp Zone. Now, I never noticed this when I was playing the game casually, but if you take too long to get to them, the Warp Zones disappear. And let me tell you, That became painfully clear when I was trying to get to some of these warp zones with Tofu Boy. Like this one, for example. I even have to alt to the warp zone at the end so it doesn't vanish on me. And that brings us to our third warp zone in Forest. This time it is a Game Boy Pocket theme, if anyone is old enough to remember those. The artwork on this one looks like it's referencing Super Mario Land 3 from 1993. And pay attention to this name down here, Auntie Pixelanti. She is actually the creator of Mighty Jill Off, where Jill is from, another character. And there's quite a story with that one, so stay tuned. As for the level itself, this is the first Warp Zone level that I can proudly say is green. These jumps right here are not easy at all for Tofu Boy. The first time I ever did one of these, it took me about 20 minutes to do it. And in this case, you have to do it and time it with these razors that shoot. So, it makes it a little bit harder. Of course, I've played so much Tofu Boy. Oh, God. So much Tofu Boy. That these things, I can do them in my sleep. So, I say that, but these still took me a couple of minutes to get. So, that just goes to show how hard they are. And once you get over this big hurdle in the middle, falling down is, of course, much easier for Tofu Boy than going up. Not the case with a lot of other characters. In Handheld Check Part 2, we have this razor that breaks the floor at the bottom, so it's kind of a race against time. You have to get to the floor before the floor disappears. Unfortunately for us, Tofu Boy is way too slow to make it, so he has to use about 50% of his full power. And this is Handheld Check Part 3. Who are we kidding here? You need to be a human-sized flea to make that jump, or Meat Boy. Tofu Boy sure as hell can't make it, so we have to alt. And of course you can alt through these razors here too, but in my last video I got called out for using the alt too much, so I'm gonna show you guys how good I am at this game. Check this out. Wapa! Dodging it. See? See, I can play this game normally too. You see? Nah, not bad. And here we are at our first Dark World Warp Zone entry, 113X. The X means that it's a Dark World level. And talk about cutting it close. It is hard to cut it closer than I did with this level. 1 millisecond later, and that warp zone would have timed out and disappeared. This level is actually one of my favorites because of how borderline impossible it is. It took a good chunk of tries to get it right. This warp zone is called Space Boy, and it is pretty clearly referencing the original Metroid. The resemblance is pretty strong. And all of our effort, all of our pain for this, the first impossible level of the challenge. Tofu Boy cannot make the jump to even start this one, and you don't even want to know the rest of the levels in this warp zone. They're all just as bad. By the way, if the level title is black, that means the level is impossible, okay? Just thought I'd throw an extra rule there to make sure you're paying attention. And we're finally out of the forest, into the hospital. That doesn't sound very good. But anyways, we finally made it. 2-8 is actually one of the levels that I grind when I'm doing the Tofu Boy 80% run. So I'm pretty decent at this one. Did not take too many tries at all. World 2 Special Warp Zone belongs to Jill. She's a little different from the rest of the cast. Why, you might ask? Well, because she actually has a reason to help Meat Boy in his quest. She really likes Bandage Girl's shoes, of course, and there's absolutely nothing more to it. Jill comes from a free indie game called Mighty Jill Off. This game is thick with lesbian and BDSM themes, which was a pretty big deal in 2009. The main character Jill has a freaky thing going on with shoes. She flies a little bit too close to the sun and gets kicked out of the tower for it. The point of the game then is to climb back up. The game itself reminds me a lot of Jump King, except that you have standard platforming obstacles like spikes and stuff. You also have Jill's signature hover that she can use in Super Meat Boy. But this game has a dark past, because basically, the lore was based off of an abusive relationship that the lead developer had with her girlfriend at the time. I'm not gonna go into it because honestly I don't know that much about it, but feel free to pause and read these posts, and come to your own conclusions. And now the Warp Zone. I actually really like how this one looks. It looks a lot like the game where Jill is from. So it kind of feels like you're playing an upgraded version of the original Mighty Jill Off. When you're playing it normally. When you're playing it as Tofu Boy, it just feels like more impossible stuff that you have to alt through. You see, the obstacles in these levels are built around Jill's ability to slow fall and turn very rapidly in the air. Tofu Boy is not very fast at turning in the air. He's actually not very fast at anything. So, unfortunately for him, that means that we have to alt through pretty much everything. A fun fact about the Bootlicker, it is actually also an album by the Melvins. Yeah, I know I'm stretching. There's not much to talk about here. Now, 212 was one of my favorite entries. Honestly, it felt like Christmas. Like when you're done beating all the levels with Tofu Boy, and then you come back and then there's a completely different challenge that you have to work around using the alt glitch. So I ended up alting to this tiny ledge here, and that leaves you at just the right height to reach the warp zone. This warp is called Castle Crushers, an obvious play off the game Castle Crashers. As for the art, this is another obvious one, clearly referencing the original Castlevania. This is another warp zone with the classic Game Boy Pocket aesthetic, and that also contains by far the hardest level of the challenge. Ah! There it is! It came out of nowhere, the hardest level in the challenge. So what makes it so hard? Well, there's not much going on for the first 3 rows. You can get up here and rest on this block no problem. But now we have a problem. We have to get to the 4th row. So far we've been standing on the solid blocks, breaking the block above us and then jumping through the gap. But we can't do that anymore. Our only choice is to jump across to the other solid block while making a gap in the row above us. We can then jump through that gap, hope that we end up going to the left and make it to the 4th row. We then have to quickly jump and make a hole on the 5th row, quickly turn around, alt and jump through that gap we just made, and make our way to Bandage Girl. Here's what all of that looks like. I call this level the Christmas tree because I can only beat it once a year. And since I can only beat it once a year, that means I only get the Castle Crushers 3 once a year, so I did not want to die here at all. Full focus, 100%. No way. Thankfully, it's not a hard level, or else, I don't know what I would have done. And we get a well-deserved Bandage Girl for our troubles. Oh, wait. Huh? Come back. Whoa, it's our first red level. Now we have to do something called a super jump. I have a short that explains how to do it, but it basically acts like an alt glitch that goes up. And you can only do it when you spawn in a level. This warp zone is called 1977, which is notably the release year of the Atari 2600. As for the art, it is drawn by the creator of the Bit Trip series, and it is very clearly referencing Bit Trip. Bit Trip, of course, takes a lot of inspiration from a lot of retro games, including Atari 2600 games, so it is just one big cluster of references. And honestly, this warp looks just like the warp with Commander Video, except the background is yellow instead of purple. And just like the Commander Video warp, there are some long stretches that we have to alt through, but there's really nothing new. Until we get to part 2 of the warp. This is actually a green level. Wow, you don't see these every day. The reason why it's green is because you go down, and except for levels with Jill, Tofu Boy does pretty well if you only have to go down. Unlike part 3 of this warp where you have to only go up. Now, I'm gonna be honest here for a second. This level is completely possible without the alt glitch. You can totally time your jumps around the bullets and climb up very slowly. But this level just about reached the limits of my patience. So if you want to do it without glitches, be my guest. As for me, I'm counting it yellow because I need the alt glitch to beat it. And welcome to the most forgettable warp in the run. Why is it the most forgettable? Well, because I forgot about it. I'm here recording this section after I finish editing the rest of the video. By the way, this one's impossible because this last jump here is too high for Tofu Boy. As for the art, this kind of looks like a level that belongs in Castlevania. And the text looks like it's straight out of the Mortal Kombat Fatality font. You see that liquid at the bottom? That's blood. Ooh. And you see these little guys moving around? They're actually called AIDS. So when you're playing this level as Meat Boy, you're a boy with no skin. And when you touch AIDS, you catch it. And as everybody knows, AIDS immediately makes you pop like a balloon. So it's pretty scary, you have to avoid them. Lucky for us, it's not very hard to do that here. You just have to wait a bit for them to go through their cycles and leave you an opening to climb the right wall. And our adventure ends at Bloodshed 2 because Tofu Boy cannot jump high enough to make it any farther. You might be wondering why we're not super jumping. The reason is because of this animation that plays when you start the level that shows you the amount of lives you have left. That animation blocks out the window where we would normally auto jump and alt. So we basically can't super jump in any of the warp zones that show you how many lives you have left. And with that, we're done with the hospital and we can finally move on to the Salt Factory warp zones. Starting off with the easiest warp zone entry in the entire game, 3-5. This warp is named Cartridge Dump, a play off of the cartridges that we used to use for games but are now obsolete. And the art is referencing the old cartridge-based game, E.T. for the Atari 2600. And I don't want to toot my horn too much, but I'm pretty confident about that one. I'm coming back after I finished editing the video, and I realized that I tooted my horn a little too hard, because it turned out I missed something. The reason this warp is named Cartridge Dump is because Atari buried a bunch of their unsold cartridges in 1983 in a landfill in New Mexico. A lot of these cartridges were copies of E.T. The warp in 3-7 is hidden under the big platform in the middle of the map, and it's usually pretty hard to reach. You need either a double jump or a character like Tofu Boy with the alt glitch. The title for this warp zone is Tunnel Vision, and I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea what this is referencing. It could be anything from Zelda to Metroid to Space Invaders. It is literally a brick wall with some words on it. And that's kind of fitting for its levels. We start off with Tunnel Vision 1. These razors are unfortunately too tall for Tofu Boy to jump over, or else this level would be one of the few greens. But such is the life we live when we choose to play Tofu Boy. Level 2 is literally alting to the end. Tunnel Vision 3 has one tricky part over here. When you get to the right, you have to jump on these disappearing blocks, and I could go on for hours about these disappearing blocks. To be able to climb them with Tofu Boy, you have to jump at them at just the right speed so that Tofu Boy gets the quick hops. He can get this awful hop that lets you not be able to climb fast enough. But that's enough of that, and that's enough of Tunnel Vision. So you remember like 10 seconds ago when I said 3-7 was the easiest warp entry in the game? I lied. 3-16 is the easiest. And don't be fooled by how purple it looks. This is actually Salt's special red warp zone. The 3-16 warp zone introduces us to everyone's favorite Meat Boy lookalike, Ogmo. This scene is from a game called Jumper from 2004 by Maddie Thorson. Maddie might just be the most successful guest character creator from the list because she later went on to create Celeste, so I can only assume that this game's also really good. It's pretty easy to see the influence this game had on Celeste with features like a checkpoint on every room, an extra jump in the air, a checkpoint in every room, these things that let you jump again when you collect them, and so on. As for the warp zone itself, these levels do a really good job at looking like the game they're referencing. It's almost like a lot of platforms these days have assets that they like to use like spikes and stuff. Are all platformers actually the same? Is that what we're learning here? Ogmo is usually the first character that you get in the game that has a double jump. So these levels are all based around that. That means that the levels are built in a way that Ogmo would be able to clear them, but someone like Meat Boy wouldn't. And as the story usually goes, if Meat Boy can't clear a level, good luck doing it with Tofu Boy. Lucky for us, none of these levels end up being too hard when Tofu Boy uses his full power. The 3-8X entry is one of the coolest ones in my opinion. It's a bit of a puzzle. There's no way to get the key and make it back in time with Tofu Boy without getting shot. So you somehow have to find a way to get inside the room where the warp zone is located. Alt happens to do the trick, and this list right here happens to be just the right height for us to alt to where we need to go. This warp zone is called Contra, and that'll make sense when you see the levels. As for the art, this is one of the harder ones to figure out. The best I could do is something like I Have No Mouth and I'ma Scream for the old Windows system, Darkseid, another old PC game, or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde for the NES. And here's why the level name makes sense. If you know anything about Contra, there are a lot of guns in that game, and you're getting shot at a lot. So it's pretty fitting that this warp zone is named that. And speaking of guns, this level was shaping up to be the hardest level I've ever done ever. Until I figured out that there's a gap in the roof. Hallelujah! Thank you, dev gods, for this gap here. Now it's pretty tricky to walk too far to the right here and fall all the way down, since you can't see where you are when you're on the roof. So you have to do this part very slowly and carefully. But if you do it right, you can land here, alt inside, and get to Bandage Girl. Contra 2, I tried really hard to do without the alt, but this rocket here shoots so fast, there's no way to climb fast enough with Tofu Boy and avoid those rockets. Contra 3, I actually went back and did after the challenge was over, because I thought you needed the alt glitch to do it, but it turns out you only need one of the keys in the top row. So you can just go up there, jump down, and if you time this jump right, you can avoid the rockets. It looks so obvious when you actually see it, but at the time, nobody in chat even thought of this. 4-8 entry made me so mad. Ooh, I hate this one. And not because it's hard or unfair. No, I hate this warp zone because how the hell are you supposed to know that it's over here? Who found this? Did anyone actually find this one playing normally? There's no way, right? You guys definitely looked it up. This warp zone is called Brimstone, and the art, I'm pretty sure it's a Doom reference. And you'll want to stay tuned for this one. The hell theme isn't just for aesthetic. This warp zone ends up actually being hell. And you remember when I said that no matter how hard the level was, if I can beat it without the alt glitch, it's green? Well, you're gonna see why I said that in Brimstone 3. You start off by climbing up here and then dodging these cheese balls. The kind of cheese balls they only serve in hell. They might look enticing, but if you touch them, poof, it's over. And then we get up here. Oh man, here we go. Time it perfectly, climb up. Oh, that took me forever to find out. The timing there is actually so tight, and I got so nervous every time I got past it. So here I am, locked in. Somebody in the chat told me to not be stupid and try to do 2 jumps really quick and actually jump while sliding on the way down. And that was the little push I needed to finally break through. A big chunk of the difficulty from this challenge ends up being the trial and error in figuring out the strategies to beat some of these levels. The 414 entry is blink and you miss it. The warp zone is very conveniently right above where we spawned, so a super jump will get us right there. And welcome to the Keymaster. The art for this one is referencing Gauntlet maybe? Kingdom Hearts? There's no way, right? So when you spawn here, this is key right next to you, and when you get that key, the floor disappears. So that's too bad. Thankfully, we can alt to skip the key, but that does make this level yellow. And Keymaster 2 is impossible. First impossible level in a while. Do I even need to explain this one? I mean, look at this. Look how far they are. I actually have a bit of history with the 418 warp zone. I constantly, and I mean constantly, run into it accidentally when trying to speedrun this level. It's right in the middle between you and the end when you're trying to beat this level with alt. The 418 warp zone introduces us to Flywrench. Now I don't know about you, but he's one of my favorite characters. Just look at him. His design just oozes personality. Now for some reason he's considered one of the bad characters of the game. But he has 3 jumps, so he's basically like Ogmo with 1 more jump. And honestly, if you're trying to get one of those achievements where you're trying to beat a world without getting hit, Flywrench is a must, since he can cheese some pretty nasty levels. But anyways, Flywrench is from, you'll never guess, Flywrench. Fully released in 2015, but how did they know about this character in 2010 when Meat Boy was released? Well, there was actually a demo in 2007. And I'll just say it, this game is awesome. It's a trip, it's hard, but the overall vibe is so good. You play as this flying wrench and you have to flap to not fall, since when you touch the wall, you die. But when you flap, you change colors. And that's where the challenge of this game comes from. There are certain obstacles that you can go through when you're a certain color. Certain actions that you do, like flapping, turn you into said color. So how is the Flywrench Warp Zone? Is it as trippy as the Flywrench game? Nope, they didn't even try. Although they do a good job at showing the power of Flywrench. The power to go straight up walls and cheese levels, of course. Lucky for us, Tofu Boy's horrible jump becomes an advantage in these levels, since he doesn't jump far out enough for this laser thing to kill us. This is actually the only level I can think of that is easier for Tofu Boy to beat than Meat Boy. Nice job, Flywrench. All of this, and the trick that we do in Fly Guy number 3, make this my favorite warp zone in the game. And here's the legendary trick. It turns out if you have the auto jump on and you alt while sliding, you can jump off the wall in the air. Pretty cool. It turns out the 47X entry is impossible for Tofu Boy. Who would have guessed? This is one of those warp zones that you need a double jump character to get into. So Meat Boy can't get in this one either. The artwork for this is obviously referencing VVVVVVVV. I mean, the level is called MMMMMMM for crying out loud. In starting off, we have to outrun this beam of light that's coming at us at the speed of Tofu Boy. We don't actually have to outrun it, but I did it for fun. And MMM2 is impossible. I'll show you why in a bit. We can climb out here to... we're only climbing out here so I can show you why. You see those big blocks in the middle? How can Tofu Boy jump over those? There's no way. And even though there's a hole at the top, there's no gap on the roof for us to be able to reach it. And we're finally here. The Rapture Warp Zones are generally considered to be one of the hardest parts in the game. Like the hardest levels in Super Meat Boy are the Dark Cotton Alley levels and the Rapture Warp Zones. Specifically Skyscraper and the Kid. And guess which warp zone we're going to do first? By the way, this warp zone is impossible for Tofu Boy because he can't jump high enough to reach it. As for the Skyscraper art, I have no clue. And I know I've said I have no clue about other arts before, but this time I really mean it. I'm actually thinking that they probably weren't referencing a single game this time, and this is just a reference to the trope of zombie apocalypse games with the main character looking over a ruined city. I also found some Mega Man images that kind of look similar if you squint your eyes really hard, like this scene here from Mega Man X after you beat the game. And here we are in Skyscraper. Will we be able to beat any of these without using the alt glitch? No. No, we won't. But you could have probably guessed that. We can't even make the first jump here in Skyscraper 1. And forget about jumping over these big lines of spikes. Thankfully, Bandage Girl lines up perfectly with this platform here, and we can alt across and reach her. And I hope you like cheese for Skyscraper 2. Well, I would guess you like cheese if you like watching Tofu Boy videos. But anyways, we can alt to the left side of this skyscraper here and climb all the way up almost to the end. And by the way, word on the street is that beating Skyscraper is as hard as beating Hospital Light World without dying. And that's from the wiki, so you know it's legit. So once we make it up here, there's a bit of a precise alt jump to jump around these spikes and make our way up there. And then we can just alt to the end. I tried really hard to beat Skyscraper 3 without using the alt glitch, but unfortunately Tofu Boy cannot jump over those 3 layers of spikes in a row. Come on, Tofu Boy, you can't even do that. So that alone gives us free reign to use alt as much as we want here. Not that it helps that much. We really only use it to clear these jumps that Tofu Boy wouldn't be able to normally. The 5-7 entry is the only time you'll ever see Tofu Boy play this level because he has no reason to play it otherwise. In the no glitch, he can't beat it. In the regular glitch, he just warps to the end. But in the Warp Zone entry, he has to traverse the entire level. And he is so slow that even with the alt glitch, he barely makes it in time. 5-7 Warp gives us the Kid, considered by many to be the best character to get the no death achievements with. This guy is actually from I Wanna Be the Guy, the movie, the game. And this game is actually one of my personal favorites. There have been so many iconic playthroughs of this game. I remember back in the day watching Flo suffer for hours as he struggled to try to beat it.
What?
His playthrough actually became a pretty big deal. It became such a meme that he actually played through the game in front of an audience at a fighting game tournament. If you don't know, Flo was a pro fighting game player and he passed away a couple of years ago. And I just can't not associate this game with his playthrough. It is forever ingrained in my mind. As for the game itself, it's trolly, hard as hell, and I really recommend it if you're a fan of Meat Boy. And then we get to the levels. These levels really need no introduction. Ask anyone who's played the game and they'll know about the Guy Warp Zone. If you're a normal player of this game, it's not uncommon to be stuck here for hours without being able to beat it. But for Tofu Boy, it was only a Tuesday. You can't see it right now, but Bandage Girl is actually underneath my portrait, so to get to her from here you have to alt out to the right and then fall back inside. The guy number 2 has that huge row of spikes in the middle that Tofu Boy can clearly not jump over, so we have to basically alt to the end. But just for fun, I wanted to see how far I could make it without any tricks. And we've made it to the guy number 3. Now this level is where boys become men. It is so insane that I could not figure out a way to beat it just using the regular alt glitch. The reason why is because those walls of spikes come at us in quick succession, and we cannot climb quick enough from the first floor to the second with Tofu Boy. Because of this, we have no choice but to super jump to the final floor. From here we can time our alts and get to the end. The 512 warp entry would be a yellow, except that the warp would disappear before we could reach it in time. So once again, we have to super jump. Thankfully, the warp is right above us where we spawn. This warp is called Sunshine Island, and that name may be a play off of Super Mario Sunshine, but the art is definitely not. It looks like something out of Sonic the Hedgehog or Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. I don't need to explain why we need to use the alt glitch here, right? But we get pretty lucky in this level, because to the right here there's this very convenient wall that we can just climb to the top, and then alt our way back to Bandage Girl. If it wasn't for this wall, we'd still be able to make it to Bandage Girl, but it would be a lot harder, so hey, we take our wins where we can get them. The platform to the left here has a very convenient height, and we can just alt straight to Bandage Girl from it. I don't need to explain why we need to use the alt here, do I? Yeah, these levels just make it really obvious what to do. And we're finally here at my favorite warp zone in the run. Now you might be thinking it's my favorite because it's the last warp zone in the game and I don't like this challenge. Or you might be thinking that it's my favorite because it's a really cool level with a really cool entry where you have to time everything perfectly to land on this platform here and then alt back into the warp zone. But no, the reason it is my favorite is because this artwork. To the astute eye, it may look like this artwork is referencing the original Super Meat Boy Flash game. But the original Meat Boy Flash game did not have dialogue. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, this warp zone is referencing the Tofu Boy Flash game. That's right, it's the only thing that makes sense. It has the Super Meat Boy knockoff graphics, but it has dialogue. I rest my case. And let's go, the beginning of the end. Meet His Death 1 has this pretty cool route here that takes us straight to the end. Now part 2 is pretty cool. We have to get this key to unlock the fan, and then... Actually, I don't know why it took me so long to figure this out, but I remembered while doing this that when you ult on the fans, they push you up like crazy, so... That one, if you time it just right, it pushes you up to the moon where you can find Bandage Girl. And then the final level? I don't even need to explain this one. You guys are used to this by now. It even gives you this little platform to the right in case you ult too far. And that was the final Warp Zone. If we can't find Bandage Girl here, we can't find her anywhere. And that's it for today. If you like this stuff, like and subscribe. If you want the thing that lets you play Tofu Boy in different levels, download in the description. Shoutouts to Bloody and Shannon for helping me through the levels and stuff. That's it for me. Bye-bye.